Well, I think Barney here is finished. How about we give her some cuts here, and I'll tell you all about all the little issues that we found along the way. Found a lot of them, but a couple were more major than others, you know what I mean? So here we go. So what are you doing, Cody?
Building my costume.
You're building a costume?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah?
I got one part done. Yeah, bye.
So, what's this costume? Because I just see cardboard.
Well,
Show me what you're doing.
so I'm gonna build everything else to, like, I'm gonna build, like, does anybody know this game called FNAF?
FNAF?
Well, I call it FNAF, but it's called Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm making the second game character, Withered Foxy.
So what's all this tape you got stuff? What's that supposed to be?
That's the hook.
The hook?
Yeah, and this is the hook part to put that in. And then that's the hand, that's his ear, that's his endo ear. And over there...
Wait a minute, these are ears?
Yeah.
Over here, these are ears?
Yeah. I just had to paint the one that's white with a little dot in the middle. I had to paint that.
So how'd I get all the paint on the table? Yeah. All right, so yeah, a small mountain of problems with this saw, but there were a couple that were really holding it back. So where to begin? I did take the top end off, and we changed our intake timing to 82 degrees. It was sitting at 88. We knocked her down to 82. Got some of that instability taken care of for sure. Definitely runs a lot better now. I've only given it a couple test cuts so far, so I mean we're like 3 or 4 cookies after the top end was put on it. But today's going to start basically our final stages of getting this thing ran in. So our carburetor issues, they were, you know, this is a 372 carburetor on this Dolmar, and the where the cable hooks up at the carburetor. Apparently the distance between where the cable butt end is and the part where that rolls the butterfly over, apparently that distance is different between the two brands, between the Dolmar and the 372. So I had to take a little bit of the plastic sheet of the actual Dolmar cable or whatever and trim just a smidge of that off to where I could get full travel of the throttle. That solved all those issues right there. Those two things really solved most of my issues. There's still a couple of things. The bar oil was not functioning correctly. I did not discover that until I made those like 3 cuts here after fixing all that. I didn't discover that. So it was getting a little bit of oil, not much. So the oil was basically just dripping down over the bar studs, and whatever was dripping down over the bar studs was getting onto the bar and looping the chain. Just enough to keep her spinning, but not enough to really do any lubrication. So that might have been part of what was robbing our torque. Probably not all of it, but some of it. Now, the biggest issue I found actually has to do with the quality of this aftermarket cylinder. Basically your cylinder's round and your ring is round. And the cylinder, the roundness of the cylinder is not as good as it should be. So this thing is bleeding a tremendous amount of pressure past the rings, or ring. This is probably the worst one I've ever built that had that issue, by far. So when I pulled the top end off, you could see the carbon deposits going the whole way down the piston, how it was trying to get into the crankcase and everything. And whenever you run into that, all that carbon eats up all your lubrication. So You could try to run it lean, if you try to run it lean, that carbon eating up all your lubrication, you're really getting into dangerous territory. You know what I mean? So for this saw here, we are not going to know nothing and to see like the full extent of how powerful this saw is until this thing gets ran in a bit more. So that's why I have this log here. You see it? That log is dedicated to this saw. Basically going to make cookies as thin as I can throughout the length of the log. But I'm going to do this over a period of time, days. Now, once this log's done, I got a hollow cherry log sitting over here, about a half a dozen little pine logs. I mean, I'm literally just running it on whatever I can. I need to run the snot out of this to get this thing to seat better. It is blowing so much compression, or so much of the combustion chamber pressures past the ring, that it's going to struggle for torque. There's just no stopping it. You know what I mean? And it has to do with the quality of this aftermarket cylinder. I don't know the brand of it. It's like $100. You can find it on eBay. The 7900 top end. It's like an aftermarket top end for the 7900, the Dolmar 7900. It costs like $100. I bought one of them, built it, and put it on this saw. Now, as far as the machine work, I think this cylinder might be a better choice for porting in the end. I was able to take 100. I was able to take 100 thousandths off the cylinder base, until I was into free porting territory. So, I do think these cylinders might be a better option for porting, but it's the run-in, the breaking in side of it. They are going to take a tremendous amount of time to get them broke in because they are just not the best quality. The plating is not the best. You got to get in there with some 80 grit or something and clean up your plating. I'm talking the actual board itself. It's going to have little, little bumps all over it or whatever. And you're going to see it on your piston if you try running it without cleaning them up. So I actually had to stick another ring in this saw because whenever I tore it down, I actually broke the original ring. The fingers. I was hanging it up on like a nail and I just clipped it, so I broke the ring. So the ring that's in it's actually different now. It's out of a 372 big bore like Farmer Tech top end, but it's well used. So we're gonna have to get a run in for this cylinder, you know. And it's more like running in the cylinder to the ring than it is running the ring in to the cylinder. So that's why I'm saying this is probably gonna take some time. We literally have to break the cylinder walls themselves down to fill, to get around this more than the ring itself. So this is going to take some effort. So today we're just going to give her some cuts, just kind of show you how she's running. But the next video you do see on this saw, it's going to be kind of like a couple of cuts a day. We're just going to make a couple of cuts a day, show you on video. If this thing takes 10, 20 days, or whatever, I'm hoping to kind of show you the saw's performance level over a period of time. So that's the next video you're going to see on this saw. It might be a week or two until you see it or whatever. But we're just basically going to be running the saw to get her broke in. Today I'm just running it to kind of show you how she's running. She is way more stable now, and yeah. I think that's about it. So yeah, let's give her a run and enjoy it. Alrighty. right, so yeah, there she is. She's running just fine. Still a little low on torque, but that will come up whenever that ring gets seated. We're probably going to see a decent jump in torque when this thing gets good and seated. Now, I forgot to mention that the clutches wore out, the clutch spring. She just doesn't want to stop the chain, you know what I mean? So I have another clutch here. It's used, I think I have one here that's used. We'll try that out and see if it's any better. I noticed there was a bit of rust on the clutch bearing itself whenever I was working on it. I should have just gone ahead and replaced the whole shebang. She was a bit rusty, if you know what I mean. But, you know, well, I figured, you know, let's find out. But we'll try the other clutch and see what happens there. You might notice the tune is a little funky with this saw. I have it tuned kind of funky. Especially the idle circuit. She's just really fat. And I'm finding that anytime I run a saw or build a saw or anything that has this much bleed past the ring, I always seem to have to tune the idle circuit really rich, super rich. And I can't get it to lean out and run properly. There has to be something to do with, you know, how, you know, all that compression and stuff, or all that combustion chamber is bleeding past the ring. Just something about it forces you to tune richer. Now, one of the most important things I forgot to mention, I can't believe I forgot it. So this saw is bleeding. It's blowing a lot of carbon and stuff past the piston. I have a picture of it, I'll show you here. But it's blowing a lot of the carbon past the ring. And this is when you want to really put some thought into your oil. So what I did whenever I first started it, I didn't think too much of it, because I have fuel here mixed with both Super Techniplate, and I have Red Armor here. Well, I finished off my gallon can of Super Techniplate, or my 2-gallon can of Super Techniplate, whatever we did the first 2 cutting sessions of this saw. And since then, I've been running Red Armor. But this is definitely a situation when you want something like Red Armor. You need something to battle that carbon buildup really well. I actually suggest something like Red Armor, more so on the break-in side than anything, or more than any other oil, really. Because when you're on the break-in tune, you know, you're typically a little rich. You're not getting a really good complete combustion and all that stuff. And having an oil that's known to battle against carbon buildup and stuff is by far your better option. And Red Armor is definitely the one to go for. Something like Super Techniplate for breaking in on something brand new and all that stuff, you can do it. I mean, it'll probably do it just fine. But with this saw here, it would have actually taken longer. I would have ended up building up a bunch of carbon and stuff. You know, Red Armor is definitely the better option for your break-in side. And once you get to a point where you're buying like a gallon of Red Armor to mix your oils and stuff, don't worry about switching brands. Just you know what I mean? Just run one oil. And Red Armor seems to be a good one for all around. Now, I have both. I do have both Super Techniplate and Red Armor. And the Super Techniplate, I use it for the methanol exclusively. I've showed you pictures of how clean it comes out. There's something about methanol and Super Techniplate. It's like those two were meant for each other. You know what I mean? It burns just fine. It's clean, super clean and everything. You really have nothing to worry about, because I'm mixing it at 20-1 and it's just fine. So, you know, a lot of your oil has to do with just how well you're getting a good complete combustion. And something in this situation, we are, you know, pretty awful. And we need to make sure we run an oil that will get us broke in safely. You know what I mean? And Red Armor is probably the best option. Now, the tune on this is actually sitting just off of 4-stroke, pretty close to it. So she will actually pull a few more RPMs in the end. I'm kind of excited. I actually think this saw is going to turn out pretty decent. Hopefully. I mean, we're going to be making cookies down the whole length of this log. as thin as we can. And then if it still ain't seated, if we still ain't seen signs of the ring being seated, then we're going to move on to other logs. And we're going to be doing that all the way up until Sawfest. So I'm going to be putting one video together to show you all of this. So it should be an interesting video, basically from start to finish, for the most part. I mean, it'll probably be a whole other year or two until this saw is completely 100% broke in. But there's like a big jump in the early stages. It usually happens around 5 tanks of fuel, 3 to 5 tanks. Usually get a nice big jump in performance at about that area. And hopefully it happens with this one, So this would be the first half a tank of fuel. I guess you could say we're cutting these cookies, and we got a long ways to go. We're going to try to document the whole thing, and hopefully you get to see it all right here on camera. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Hey, hope you enjoyed this one. We'll catch you in the next one. Later.